So, welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the good conversation over the a bit short coffee break. And I would like to start the second part of today's session. So now in front of us we have the outcome result of the polling question that was shown at the end of the last session before the coffee break. So the question was, what is the most influential political driver for the energy efficiency in your country? And so the champion number one was the national energy efficiency target over the other items like NDCs, sustainable goals, or the regional targets. So thank you very much for your cooperation in this polling question. Now, so without much ado, let us start with the first speaker of this panel. And the first speaker is our dear friend, Dr. Sun. So Dr. Sun Shenshen, he was elected the Secretary General of the IEF International Energy Forum in August of 2016. And prior to that, he was the president of the China National Petroleum Corporation, CNPC's ETRI, Economics and Technology Research Institute, reporting to Chinese leadership on energy policy decision-making, Chinese gas pricing reforms, and also the International Energy Corporation. He was also deeply involved in the energy policy studies of the China's energy five-year planning process. So, Dr. Sun, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salamari, for the kind introduction. And dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning and good afternoon. And thank you for the International Energy Agency for having me to speak here today. The International Energy Forum prides itself on the facilitating and promoting global energy dialogue on the number of timely and relevant topics. Today, the energy industry is changing at a faster pace than at any time. Energy disruption, geopolitical changes, and new market reality are transforming energy systems and the economics of energy on a global scale. Structural sectoral changes are shifting the energy mix together towards the lower carbon resources, driven by the advancement in technology and the growing environmental concerns, and accompanied by the energy-saving measures and policies. Therefore, it is no surprise that energy efficiency becomes a part of the global energy conversation. World economic growth is projected to more than double GDP by 2040, with the global population rising well above 9 billion people. It is therefore incumbent upon us as the international community to meet society's increased demand for energy, while at the same time reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Energy is the first energy. Energy efficiency is very important because if the energy efficiency level catch the level of German China, the China's energy efficiency, just now we have Sanjin give you a report about this one, make a lot of the progress. But so far this progress is still not enough. Consumption value of China energy can be reduced about 50% of the total volume. Of course, Japan even better than Germany. And after this, the discussions, and also this is my second time to join this energy efficient meeting in this meeting room. So by this one, I personally feel that under such a progress, and another or other the 5 of the points or observations are important. And just now we have this the questionnaires ask which one is the most important the driving force for this. I personally feel that, and the most important one is the policy of the government and the policy formations and endorsement. Of course, for the goals of this the energy efficiency and for the others also are important. But I feel that the policy formation and the guidance and endorsement is one of the most important. The second one, I think the people's behavior and the performance also important. After many years education and others, but I still feel that in many areas still far away. So people still like the big cars. People still like the big houses. Still not enough careful about how to control and save the energies. So this is the mentality of people. I think the education is the second. Because time-wise, so I just touch the issue. I don't elaborate too much. And the third one, I think technology improvement and also innovations. Innovations in many places, and especially innovation in the energy efficiency is extremely important. The number 4 is the investment and market drive. This morning we have a speaker mentioned about that. The CO2 needs to have a value, have a cost. And in this case, people will try their best to reduce the use of fossil fuels. So this is number 4 important. And then the last one, I feel that that's the most important is international cooperation. Because for energy efficiency, it's not only for the policy issue, it's investment issue, and the money issue, and also technology issue. For all these issues, it needs international cooperation. So the energy efficiency requires global leadership, patience, and ability to solve differences. This may not be easy, but such effort will undoubtedly bear fruit over the long term for the global community. IEF is doing its part in the context of the knowledge sharing framework on energy efficiency. IEF Energy Minister gathered at the 16th International Energy Forum in New Delhi in April this year and encouraged the stakeholders to accelerate energy efficiency gains across the full energy spectrum. The oil and gas climate initiative, led by industry, played an important role as well. I was pleased to participate the last meeting in New York this September. The collective maximum emission reduction target agreed by OGCI companies are of relevance to the IEF work on efficient and sustainable supply chains and the dialogue on orderly transformations. In the spirit of continuing such a dialogue, I would like to highlight some events that will further the IEF vision, and this include the 6th IEF ITU Ministerial Gas Forum on 21st and 22nd November 2018 in Barcelona, Spain, means next month. The second one, 9th IEF OPEC Symposium on Energy Outlooks on 27th February 2019 in Riyadh, Saudi. The number 3 is the 5th IEF CAPSAC Thought Leaders Roundtable on the efficient and the sustainable energy supply chains. This also in Riyadh. The number 4 is 8th Asia Ministerial Energy Roundtable on 9 to 10 September 2018 Abu Dhabi, co-hosted by India. So I wish, if you are interested, and join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sun, for the very good overview of the activities related to the energy efficiency by the energy industries and the governments. Thank you very much for that. So our next speaker is Ms. Tina Bromley, and she's the Executive Secretary of the Vienna Convention for the Protection of the Ozone Layer and the Montreal Protocol on Substances that Deplete the Ozone Layer at the United Nations Environment Program. Recent assignment have been the ambassador at the OECD and also the Minister of Environment, the Energy and Climate Change in Greece. So thank you very much for coming. So Ms. Tina Bromley, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And distinguished participants, I would like first to thank the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency for inviting me to this important forum. I head the Secretariat of the Montreal Protocol, the treaty best known for protecting the ozone layer by phasing out CFCs and other ozone-depleting gases. So you may wonder why I'm here today. Actually, I have been wondering for the last 2 days, because I found myself as being sort of an outsider in this community. The Montreal Protocol has to do with energy efficiency, and because for the last 30 years, 30 plus years, it has been reducing climate change, as many of the ozone-depleting substances that we have been phasing out were also climate warming gases. Secondly, every market transition from one refrigerant to its alternative led to better and more modern equipment, and therefore, although we have never quantified how much, to energy efficiency improvements. Thirdly, starting from next year, the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol enters into force and will go even harder after climate change by phasing down HFCs, powerful climate warming gases that became widely used as replacements for HCFCs and CFCs. The Kigali Amendment is particularly relevant for this gathering today, as it brings the need for wide-ranging reform in the cooling sector, and it carries many opportunities for further improvement in the sector's energy efficiency. We must acknowledge that we cannot do without cooling. As the July 2018 report by Sustainable Energy for All revealed, 1.1 billion people face immediate risks from lack of access to cooling. A lack of cooling means 470 million people in poor rural areas have no access to safe food and medicines. 630 million people in urban slums have little or no protection against growing heat waves. The Sustainable Development Goals on zero hunger, no poverty, economic growth, sustainable cities depend on access to cooling. We must also acknowledge that the demand for cooling is growing. Air conditioning sales are rising rapidly in emerging economies and developing countries, especially in Asia. By 2050, around 2/3 of the world's households could have an air conditioner. This growth is why we must both address the climate challenge posed by HFCs and take this opportunity to reform the energy efficiency of the sector. And the Montreal Protocol has a key role to play in this space. In the 1980s, just to give you a very quick flashback, CFCs and HCFCs were in air conditioning, in refrigeration, in hairsprays, in solvents. This usage was steering a hole in the ozone layer, allowing harmful ultraviolet radiation to pour through. Ozone-depleting substances were so pervasive that phasing them out needed a huge effort and investment. Technological alternatives were either non-existent or considered too costly. Some of the main industries were initially opposed to these controls. But diplomacy built on solid and ever-developing science prevailed, and the Montreal Protocol was adopted. And as a result, we can say today that the ozone layer is expected to recover by around mid-century. Now, the parties to the Montreal Protocol are aiming to replicate this success with HFCs. Nations that ratify the Kigali Amendment are committing to cutting the production and consumption of HFCs by more than 80% over the next 30 years. Their actions can avoid up to almost half a degree of global warming by the end of the century, only from the transition of the refrigerants. This does not include the climate gains from the energy efficiency equipment. If the power for cooling comes from fossil fuel sources, it contributes to climate change, which in turn increases global temperatures and the need for cooling. Energy efficiency can dampen this negative feedback loop with abundant opportunities for improvements as the industry adjusts its technologies. This is the crossroads where we can unite the environment and the energy communities, and this is why I have been invited here today. At the request of the same parties of the 197 governments who are parties to the Montreal Protocol, we organized a workshop in Vienna earlier this year in which the International Energy Agency played a key role. Some takeaways were that the easiest, the fastest, the most effective action is to ensure all new ACs are very efficient. Acting to phase down HFCs while enhancing energy efficiency can more than quadruple the effects of actions taken in isolation. And simultaneous action also prevents lock-in to technology that only maintains energy efficiency without looking at the refrigerant itself and vice versa. The big question, therefore, from governments is how to combine the change of refrigerants on a very tiny side of the supply side with measures that affect demand. And the workshop revealed that there were many options to choose from and support. Moving to low GWP refrigerants is expected to improve the energy performance of the equipment only by up to 5%. The big difference comes if we optimize and use new compressors, heat exchangers, and control in refrigerations and air conditioning systems. Using energy labels can help consumers make better, efficient choices. Using smartphone apps, we heard about them yesterday, can also help to remotely control devices and reduce the shift periods or the peak demand. Using demand-side, utility demand-side management programs can overcome barriers to investment. Economies of scale also are very important through district cooling and can save significant amounts of energy, especially in high ambient temperature locations. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I would like to reiterate that as access to refrigeration and air conditioning grows, so does the impact on the environment and the temperatures rise even further. This feedback loop will continue unless we act to break it. To succeed, we must bring the environment and energy communities closer together, and the Montreal Protocol can help in this task. Although the protocol is a specific treaty with very specific objectives, it has pervasive impacts on all domains of growth and society. It's about cooling, it's about technology transfer, multilateral assistance, compliance and reporting, new jobs, environment and climate benefits. Building on these parameters and creating synergies with other funds, treaties and programs, and engaging the private and philanthropic sector is key to multiplying and magnifying its effects. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bompili, for the very clear presentation on the link between the ozone-depleting substances and the various kind of the climate and the environmental affairs. So thank you very much for that. And also, we cannot agree more on the critical importance of the air conditioners in the future energy demand. And also, we at the IEA is working hard on the cooperation with the other organizations in terms of the implementation of the Kigali initiative. So thank you very much for this. Now, so the last, but of course not least, the final speaker of this Global Insight panel is Monsieur Fabrice Boissier, who was appointed the Deputy Director General of the French Agency for Environment and Energy Management, ADEME, on the 1st of December 2014. Prior to that, from 2006 to 2010, he served as the Director of the Geothermal Energy Department at the French National Office of Geological and Mining Research, and was in charge of supporting the development of the sector and R&D projects. From 2010 to 2014, he was the Director of Risk Management at the French National Agency for the Radioactive Waste Management. So, Mr. Bossier, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you for this introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to give you some insights about the French policy for energy efficiency. As my introduction, I would like to set up the long-term challenge we are now facing. We published last year an energy climate scenario for 2050. This vision is a trajectory for the energy transition and focused on the demand side management in all economic sectors, and where we identify possibility to gain in energy efficiency. This work emphasizes two key outputs. The first one is that we cannot achieve the carbon neutrality in 2050 if we do not put the highest priority on energy efficiency. In France, we have the Energy Transition Act, voted in 2015, that sets an ambitious goal to reduce energy consumption by 50% by 2050. Our scenario at ADEME confirms that this is the minimum we must achieve to cut down our green gas emissions. The second output is that this huge drawdown in energy consumption will be very difficult to achieve. We must mobilize every means in every economic sector to gain in energy efficiency. Enormous efforts must be deployed in the short and medium term. You see on this slide the figure illustrating this challenge. In France, our final energy consumption is nowadays at 150 million ton oil equivalent. We have to draw down by 100 in 2035 and 80 in 2050. You see that every economical sector must decrease sharply its energy consumption. In the building sector first, the reduction imposes the massive renovations of existing buildings at a huge pace, 500,000 buildings each year up to 2030 and 750,000 afterwards. In the sector of transports, it's more a revolution than a transition. We must reduce the transport demand. This is achievable with social innovations like deployment of teleworking, better urban organizations, or major restructuring of logistics. We must also shift to mobility services instead of car stations with shared vehicles, carpooling, in order to raise the vehicle occupancy to 2 people per vehicle instead of 1 today. In the industrial sector, energy efficiency shall continue to increase thanks to less energy-consuming production technologies and optimal energy organizations in companies. This is just a short overview of the scenario, but it shows that we must achieve deep changes in our society. We need active public policy to promote energy efficiency and change in behavior. I will give you 3 examples of such policies that we conduct in France. The first one is our French Energy Saving Certificate Scheme, the ESC scheme. It's our main instrument in France for energy demand management policies. It's a transversal device that addresses all forms of energies, all users in all sectors. It has allowed the energy efficiency ecosystem to be structured with the growth of consulting companies, energy services companies, also among local authorities, new department devoted to energy efficiency. As in other countries, this market-based instrument reposes on energy savings obligations imposed by the public authorities on energy suppliers. They can be electricity supplier, gas supplier, fuel suppliers. And we set a multi-year energy saving objective distributed among the operators according to their market share. At the end of the period, each energy supplier must demonstrate he had fulfilled its obligations. The obligated parties have many solutions to comply with their obligations. You see on the slide, they can conduct standard operations. These operations are defined at the national level with deemed energy saving associated to a given action. For example, it can be the change of efficient motors in industry, or the change of lighting systems, or dwelling insulations, and so on. We have nowadays a catalog of 200 official standard operations. They have proven easy to implement and cost efficient while promoting the best practices. The second solution for obligated parties is to conduct special operations. Energy saving is then calculated case by case. This is appropriated to specific operations, mainly in industrial sector. Third possibility, obligated parties can also finance energy efficiency programs like training, information, and innovation. The freedom left to energy suppliers and the ability to trade certificates enhance the cost efficiency of the scheme. I would like to highlight two challenges associated with such a system. The first one is that a market-based instrument is not that easy to manage. It must stay transparent, efficient, and with limited volatility. As you see on this slide, we have now a good track record. For 10 years, the system has made it possible to achieve nearly 1,500 terawatt-hour CUMAC of energy savings. The terawatt-hour CUMAC unit is the unit to count the energy saving. It represents the calculated energy saving cumulated over the lifetime of an operation with a 4% discount rate. During the first 10 years, we were in a ramp-up period. Targets were very low at the beginning and rising significantly in the third period. During this period, the prices remained low and decreased below 2 euros per megawatt-hour CUMAC in 2016. This means that we had a great potential of energy savings achievable at low cost. But with the fourth period, opened at the beginning of this year, the scheme is now fully deployed and the target is really ambitious. We have now a target for 3 years of 1,600 terawatt-hour CUMAC. That means more than in the 11th first year of the system. The obligated parties will therefore have to significantly accelerate the current rate of production to fulfill the obligation. As a consequence, the price of the certificate is steadily increasing. It's now at more than 5 euros per megawatt-hour CUMAC. This means that energy saving opportunities are now more costly to find. The obligated parties have to look for new fields for energy efficiency. At the beginning, they looked only in the residential sector, and they are now moving to the industrial sector where there are huge potentiality also, but it's more costly. The second challenge with such a system is the quality of operation. We have to ensure the conformity of all these operations. Two situations can be found. The first is to have error of good faith or quality problems on sites, and this needs pedagogy to be carried out on behalf of all the actors. We also need to raise the level of competencies of the building professionals. But another critical point is the possibility of fraud. This is all the more important that the financial volumes involved are huge in the fourth period. Two main types of fraud can be found: false declaration on the work done, or request made for fictitious works. Regarding the extent of the scheme, we cannot make the control at the national management structure. So we recommend to pursue the process of empowerment of the whole ESC sector. Each obligated party or delegate is responsible for its ESC demand. They shall put in place systematic checks before filling the ESC applications. This needs more to be deployed. At the national level, the government shall make a transparent use of arsenal of sanctions so that the action against fraud become really deterrent. I come now to my second example of policy for energy efficiency. This is a much more smaller operations, but we think it's a promising one. ADEME launched a program targeting small and medium-sized companies last year with a double objective: to raise their awareness on the energy and material flows and to assist them in implementing and monitor energy efficiency actions. The problem the SMEs face is that they have no time to give to issues that are not their core business, so that they can lose a lot of money, a lot of energy, and don't even be aware of it. We are convinced that this is a great potential of quick wins to drive down costs and increase competitiveness. So our action is to offer turnkey support for SMEs to identify the hidden losses. In concrete terms, we organize and pay for an audit of energy and material flows in the company. A first experiment conducted in 2016, you see on the slide, showed the potential is very important. On average, more than 60,000 euros per year have been saved per company. A significant point is that these energy and money savings were achieved with very low cost of investment. For more than 50% of them, the cost was less than 10,000 euros, and the average return time was 7 months. This confirms that the problem is not technical, but organizational. SMEs don't find a way to implement very simple actions to make energy saving. After this successful experiment, we launched last year an operation called SMEs Winners on All Fronts. The principle stays the same, but we ask the company to reimburse the audit cost if the savings identified exceed a certain floor. We have now more than 300 companies engaged in the process. The challenge we are now facing is that it stays difficult to recruit companies at a sufficient pace. Although it is a no-regret action for them, we haven't found a way until now to create a generalized enthusiasm among SMEs. In my point of view, this is symptomatic of the limit of public policy for energy efficiency. If we don't find the way to trigger a deep change of mentality among economic actors, we won't reach our ambitious goals. My last example will be a consumer-oriented project led by ADEM. It's a European project called Top 10 Act. It aims at giving relevant information on energy-efficient products to help consumers to make well-informed purchasing decisions. Indeed, there is clearly a market failure. Although it's more beneficial for the customer to buy energy-efficient products, manufacturers still offer less efficient ones. So Top 10 Act helps to convince manufacturers through multinational pressure that a demand exists for efficient products and support market transformation towards more sustainable products. For that, Top 10 Act identifies and displays the top energy-efficient products in 16 European countries and pushes this information to consumers through tailored national websites and targeted communication activities. This is a free, accessible to all public service for information. But Top 10 Act is much more than its website. While the data are presented in a very easy-to-understand way, Top 10 Act builds on exhaustive, independent, and continuously updated market survey. Top 10 Act also targets public and private entities because large buyers have the ability to steer the market towards more energy efficiency products. Within the average savings triggered per year by this Top 10 Act project, it's more than 1 terawatt-hour of primary energy demand reduction. The people touched by the Top 10 Act is more than 1.7 million people in Europe, and we have more than 140 million media contacts in Europe. So this is a real lever to promote energy efficiency. It's a first success, but we are clearly not yet at the scale for the European market. So with this last example, I want to conclude. I think that the 3 examples I gave show how important it is to promote energy efficiency through public policies. But it also shows that these policies are difficult to design, difficult to implement. We have to go faster, we have to go deeper in the changes for the society, and we have not yet found the good solutions. Many tools exist, but we must combine them in an efficient way. This underlines the interest to share our practices in conference like the one we are having today, and I thank the IEA for organizing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bossier. So the level of ambition required, it's huge, but also your presentation of very specific measures, they're very helpful. And also we should try to kind of improve our measures for achieving this, the ambitious targets. And thanks to the speakers, the cooperation, so I was able to catch up a bit more, closer to the original schedule. But I wonder if there are any, I have time for one question. So if there's anyone who would like to ask the We can do that? Anyone? If not, then I would like to thank the excellent presentation by the speakers. Thank you very much. I would like you to join me in thanking the panel with the applause. Thank you. So unfortunately, there is no break with the next session. So I would like to remain seated and wait for the next panel, the final round to start. Thank you.
Maybe next to Fatih Bilal? Yeah, it's next to him.
Perfect. So thank you very much to the previous panel and my colleague Mr. Sadamori, who is the Director of Energy Markets here. Now this is the last session, but we have an extremely powerful group here. I guess you know all of them, starting from my right, skipping Brian for a moment, if you don't mind. I think everybody knows Ajay Mathur. He's the energy guy in India. He knows efficiency, oil, gas, electricity, renewables, and Indian economy and Indian priorities. Ajay, thank you very much for coming once again to IEA. This is a great, great privilege to have you with us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ajay. Then again, on my right, we have Mr. Toyoda, who is the chairman and the CEO of the prestigious Japanese Institute for Energy Economics. And I had the pleasure within 1 week of time, Mr. Toyoda, to be 4 times together. So first we met many years ago, but last week we met in Nagoya, then in Tokyo, the day before yesterday, was it? Today in Paris, of course, and Monday we are going to meet again in Singapore. What a great pleasure. So this is to be with you, Mr. Toyoda. Mr. Toyoda has been many years serving the Japanese government at very high levels, at the Japanese government, in the Ministry of Energy, Trade and Industry, now since a long time being the chairman and the CEO of the IEJ, as I told, a very prestigious institute, advise the Japanese governments and others, and we learn a lot from IEJ, working very closely with IEJ. Thank you very much, Mr. Toyoda, for coming here. And on my side, we put men and women here. I don't know how it happened, but we have the, of course, everybody also knows Laurence Tubiana. Currently, she's the CEO of European Climate Foundation, but we all know that Laurence was one of the key architects of the Paris Agreement, and we not only know Laurence, but we all thank Laurence for her great efforts having the Paris Agreement signed in the year 2015. One of the very progressive countries when it comes to energy efficiency is, of course, we read almost every day the news from Canada, and we are delighted that Mrs. Joyce Henry, who is the Director General for Natural Resources in Canada, again, since a few years, we see that the Canadian government and efforts on energy efficiency accelerating. I am sure, Joyce, you play a very important role in that. And we have seen recently also in the Halifax, in the G7 energy meeting, that Canada is very keen to push the energy efficiency in particular, but clean energy technologies in general. So we thought this last the very powerful session not to have presentations and so on, but more of a fireside chat, as Brian said. But perhaps I should also introduce Brian. So everybody knows Brian, but Brian is perhaps the well-placed, if I may say so, Brian, the global energy efficiency expert of the IEA. Everybody knows Brian, and since 3 years, the IEA enjoys working with Brian as our head of energy efficiency division, and I hope, Brian, you also enjoy working with the IEA. Thank you very much. It is the right answer. So now, may I just start with perhaps Ajay with you, if you don't mind. Now, India in the last few years show a great performance in many sectors of energy. So this is ranging from the renewables program to in terms of the natural gas, but energy efficiency has been one of the most impressive success stories in India. What is the secret behind that? Can you please tell us why India has been so successful and how the energy efficiency became such an important part of the Indian energy policy making? We know that you are part of the success story, you yourself, with your previous job and with your current job, but can you tell us a bit the background?
Fatih, thanks. I mean, it's an interesting question. I think at the heart of it lie three very different things. The first is that India is growing and growing fast. And very clearly, one of the things that was realized was that tomorrow can't be more of yesterday. The amount of resources, energy resources that are needed would be so large as to bankrupt everybody, including the nation. And consequently, energy efficiency was important. That was one part. The second thing that happened, and I think this is a key factor, was that there was a growing understanding amongst energy users, whether they're at homes or in industries, that energy bills had started dominating their, at least their bottom lines, and sometimes top lines were affected because of the energy bills. And this, as I said, is occurring both in homes and in industries. The third issue is air pollution. And given the high levels of air pollution, and this is the time of the year when we are again seeing air pollution levels rise in Delhi, a large part of it is energy-based. These three things came together. And as they came together, what happened was, number one, a public call for action on energy efficiency, which the private sector responded to. I have often given this example, and I'll repeat it. When the Perform, Achieve and Trade program was being launched, the Perform, Achieve and Trade program asks industry to reduce its specific energy consumption, amount of energy produced per ton of steel or cement or whatever, by a certain amount over a 3-year period. There were a lot of industries which participated. There were a lot of industries when the program was implemented who overachieved what they did. But the important issue is that with one exception, nobody opposed the program. This, in my view, had all the makings of the perfect storm. Now, there's one more issue, Fatih, that I want to raise now, and it is something that I would like a broader discussion on. One of the things that we discovered was that one of the very effective ways of pushing energy efficiency was a business model that helped bring down prices. Now, the best example is the LED program, about which the IEA has also written. But what it does is aggregating demand on the one side, doing bulk procurement on the other, again and again and again. This, therefore, provided confidence both to policymakers and to energy users that if they participate in energy efficiency, both the volumes will increase, the volumes of energy savings will increase, while prices go down. So there was a self-reinforcement that also occurred, policy and consumers on the one side and effectiveness on the other. Long answer to a short.
No, it's excellent. It's very good. It is like you also answered the question, what are in general, in an emerging economy, what are the key drivers of energy efficiency policies? But Ajay, may I tell you something, ask you one more thing? I am not an energy efficiency expert. I look at the colleagues tell me, I look at the numbers and the policies and the results. One of the most impressive story I have ever seen in the energy efficiency history, and I have been repeating this across the world, is your LED story. I think many of the ambassadors and others may not be well aware of this LED, the adventure you went through. Would you like to a bit sketch out what was the idea, how it happened, and how other countries now use it as a source of inspiration? Can you please tell us briefly the colleagues?
Absolutely. You just have to get me started on this. The long and the short of it was very clear to us that lighting was a major source of electricity use and increasing very fast. As LEDs came into the market, it was also very clear that this was a huge opportunity to reduce the amount of energy consumption for each lumen of light that we got. The question was how to do it, because the price of an LED bulb in the market in 2013 was approximately 400 rupees when the price of an incandescent bulb was 10 rupees. But even at 400 rupees, because of the energy savings, it would pay for itself in 3 years. But nobody used it. I didn't use it. And the reasons were that for a bulb, this was a very large amount of money. And if it failed, then you're losing a lot. So therefore, the model that was created was, number one, the creation of a special company, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, whose model was that they would purchase lamps in bulk. And when they purchase in bulk, and then they would recover money from people who they sell the LED bulbs to on a certain amount per month. So they became, in a sense, the traders of the LED bulb. They bulked up demand on the one side, and from you and me, energy users, and said that you will pay the money for the LED bulb through the electricity bills. At 10 rupees a month, the price for a normal bulb, the savings we calculated would be about 15 rupees a month. And they would continue to pay till the entire cost was recovered, no subsidies. Then they turned around and did bulk procurement. And in the first bulk procurement, when the market price was 400 rupees, we got a price of 310 rupees. We were ecstatic. But as the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth procurements done, the price kept dropping till it reached about 38 rupees, 310 to 38 rupees over a period of about 18 months. 400 million bulbs have been sold. The short point I think that we have learned from it is industry is willing to invest if there is a certainty of a market. Consumers, one of the things I should have also said is that when we started selling this program to consumers, we said if the bulb fails, it will be replaced, no questions asked. And this was a requirement that was passed on to the LED producers from whom we bought the bulbs. So they had to be sure that their LED bulbs worked. A transformation has occurred, prices have dropped. Now we see this model being used in many other countries. We have a low, and many other countries include the UK, by the way. And what we have seen is that it is now a model which is now also being extended to other sectors. Air conditioners, for example. Solar pumping systems. So where we see large markets, where we see the opportunities of economies of scale happening, it's a business model that we believe has a huge role for success in developing country markets.
Thank you very much, Ajay. And I can tell you that when this morning I talk about that we are organizing this capacity training in many countries, and we have been discussing with the Indonesian government how successful your LED program was, and showing as a source of inspiration in the context of Indonesia, of course. And this is definitely a source of inspiration, not only for emerging countries, but other countries as well. So thank you very much, and congratulations for your personal contribution to that very important program. So I will ask one question to all the colleagues here, and I will then go back to our colleagues here on the floor and get your questions to our distinguished colleagues here. Mr. Toyoda, we have seen in the morning that the METI minister showed a very impressive graph, how the Japan since 1970s improved its energy efficiency. So, of course, we all know that Japan is globally, when you look at historically, the champion of energy efficiency. If I may, I have two questions here. Why Japan has been so successful? One. Second, why some other countries started at the same time, you think, with the same similar framework conditions, why their programs were not as successful as Japan? What is again the secret behind the Japanese success story when it comes to those the graphs that Mr. Minister showed us?
Thank you very much, Dr. Buell. Very interesting questions. But I have to say, the biggest reason why Japan could succeed in making our economy at least one of the most efficient is simply because Japan is one of those poorest energy endowed country. Without any education, as everybody understands, Japan is energy poor. And particularly when we had accident or we had supply disruption, everybody understands, Japan, we have to improve our energy efficiency. I think one good example is that in 1973, there was oil crisis, the first oil crisis, and what happened in Japan is that after 11 p.m., TV was not allowed to have broadcasting. And after around 8 p.m., the neon sign in Ginza was not allowed to put on. So it's not secret. I think Japan is one of the most energy poor country, and that, in a sense, that helps us to think about how to improve our energy efficiency. And perhaps the second question or the first question are related to each other. What we could do, try to do is to recognize Japan is not necessarily like the United States. Japan cannot be like EU. Japan is Japan. We have to find out the Japanese way. We have a different social background. We have different cultural background. We have a different relationship between central government, local government. We don't have any particular super regional government. And so we have to find out the Japanese way. And what we try to do is to have a sort of framework to save energy where the balance between regulation, and incentive can be provided. And the Japanese way is soft regulation rather than hard regulation. By saying soft regulation, we try to say we have a target, but how to achieve target by industry, you can decide. You can find out the best way you'd like to achieve. And when they cannot achieve that target, again, here is a sort of soft way to encourage them to do more. There is no immediate punishment. There is no fines to be imposed. What the government is trying to do is to simply publicize the name of big companies. And big companies wanted not to be publicize their names as poor performance business company, and so they try to make the best effort. So I think one of the most important things which we may have to understand is that different countries have different background, and even though you have or we have the same target, how to achieve can be different. And Indian way is the best for Indians, perhaps, and the Japanese way is the best for Japanese, and European way, and US way. I think they can find the best way to achieve the target depending on social background, the cultural background, the relationship between central government and local government, etc., etc. So I think one of the important things which I would like to emphasize is that it's better for us to understand to recognize the importance of recognizing the difference. And then we can find out the best way for respective country.
Excellent. So even though there are differences between India and Japan, one common denominator is just perhaps they are both energy importing country and saving energy, saving fuel bill, oil bill, gas import bill, energy security played a very important role there. I will come to another driver, climate change, in a moment with Lawrence, but let me ask you one more question, Mr. Toyada. So it is 1970s it started, this energy efficiency push. It is more than 40 years. It's a long story. And within the 40 years, there are many governments in Japan, different political parties, left, right, center. You went to all of them, so congratulations. Now, but even though government policies, the foreign policy, and perhaps the interior policy, defense policy may have changed slightly here and there, but the commitment to energy efficiency didn't change. It is something very special. Would you like to confirm what I said? The energy efficiency policy has been over the parties, political parties.
Well, yes, Dr. Bill, you are right. We had change of ruling parties in the past 10 years, and this government, LDP government, is at least trying to utilize nuclear energy, but the previous government started saying we have to phase out. So in that regard, we have some confusion in terms of policy. But as far as energy efficiency policy is concerned, all parties are supportive. Again, it's simply because we are one of the most energy poor country. I think, I don't know whether you know what is the self-sufficiency ratio at this moment. Japan, now most nuclear energy is off. And so our self-sufficiency ratio is at maximum 8%.
8%.
8%. I think Indian colleague Mashu-san, I think you are much richer in terms of energy. And Canada, ideally MB, you are exporting country. And so Japan, how poor we are. So everybody, every child, every children understand. And so I think that is the basis. But I think from a longer standpoint, all countries may understand that we would run out of energy eventually. So I think perhaps Japan is one of the showcase for energy poor country, but eventually, particularly when we try to address climate change, similar situation would emerge in terms of zero carbon energy, which country is really self-sufficient. I think the same thing can be said.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toyoda. So up to now, we have understood from the Japan and Indian examples that the key drivers could include energy security, reducing the import bill for the economy, and addressing the air pollution in the cities. Now, of course, there is one other issue, which is climate change, CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas emissions in general. Laurence, this morning we talked about the recent report, in fact, in the context of World Energy Outlook that Brian and his colleagues put together, which says with the existing technologies, no technology change, if the countries would use only the cost-effective efficiency policies, and if everything else even stays constant, no growth in renewables, no growth in other clean energy technologies, global CO2 emissions would not increase, they will even decrease. And efficiency alone would make the job of 40% of the job of reaching our Paris targets. A big tool we have to address our climate problem. Yet, the same report says that the efficiency policies across the world is slowing down, the momentum there. So, where is the problem? Why we cannot make the policymakers put more emphasis on energy efficiency when addressing our climate change challenge worldwide? Do you see some good examples, some better examples? Can you tell us about the context of energy efficiency in the with respect to climate change?
Thank you for your question, and I discussed briefly with Brian earlier on. It's impressive, of course, and to say the truth, yourself, the International Energy Agency, and particularly yourself, Fatih, you have been saying that since now how many years, that we could do a lot in meeting the climate change targets, even before Paris Agreement, that really, of course, the energy efficiency should be the sort of driving part of all this. On one side, I think there is, of course, there are many questions. I'm sure you have been revising these arguments all the day. Why there is so little enthusiasm? Again, we have to balance that because a lot of efforts have been done. I think we have heard the energy efficiency heroes that Ajay hears, and of course a fantastic example of Japan. And we see that we have all our ways. Europe has mainly been through regulation. With targets and regulation, it was a little bit the story of EU delivered somehow. I feel maybe, and again, that's again thinking with you, maybe energy efficiency has been seen as a way of incremental change, whereas finally energy efficiency policy are about finally transformation. I'm saying that because, again, if I look at an example, the efficiency standards in cars in Europe, a big battle again last week with different industries. We are going there. We have to do much more progress, by the way. But still, we see that if we go a little further on energy efficiency in the car, we can flip probably and change technology. So I think it's probably the way we have understood, again, thinking aloud with you, that was the imperative of this meeting. I think one aspect is we haven't sought energy efficiency in the system, and we have picked that like we have to make progress here and there, and maybe with a too fragmented vision. And so, in a way, it has not raised the political interest we need because it seems so technical. We have to do better on appliances, better on cars, better on this and that. And that's why I think the model that AJ is, although you have a very strong social model around energy efficiency in Japan, AJ model is really interesting, is how you secure the markets, which I think we can borrow a lot. And that's exactly the systemic thinking. I think that in Europe, for example, if we, with public procurement, we could do a lot on collective fleets, we could do a lot on buildings by public procurement of a certain category of building we want, ensuring the price we will pay in 10 years' time, for example. I think that will relaunch the movement. But for the moment, I think we are like, yes, this will happen, it's about incremental change. So that's the first obstacle in my view. The second one, and it's really, we have to win that battle, because again, we will not meet the Paris target if we don't win that particular battle. The second element is the connection with people. I think that's where we are lacking the sort of the connection. It's quite evident, if we have much more energy efficiency in building, we could have really better homes. We could fight energy poverty through this, but we are not playing that much. So we are, it's still, again, a very technical discussion, so that's why it's not political, and it's not a social discussion where it should be. So again, I'm not giving the good example, but again, I think, in particular because I'm struck by the situation in Europe, where we could do so much more. And because we are not connecting with really the concern of people, which is, I don't remember the numbers, but it looks like for France, the energy bill for households is really high. Of course, you have to add transport and heating, etc., but it's high. And people are really concerned about that. But for the moment, we haven't said, look, if we want to go out of energy poverty, efficiency is a response. And so I think we should change the debate around energy efficiency. It's far too technical, it's not sexy. People, I remember as an anecdote, a very famous leader from a European country, I would not say who, it was before Paris, he was looking for a role, a global role. And then at that time I was not in the French government still, and we just say, why are you not the champion on energy efficiency? That's where the 40%, etc. All these good stories that International Energy Agency has been producing. And he was very, I don't see myself, I can see me as a leader in renewable energy or electrification of transport, but energy efficiency, I don't see the point. So, Fatih, you are very good at communication. You should develop a department in International Energy Agency, really totally reframing the message.
Done. Now, you are perfectly right. If it was the question that I asked Brian when I offered him the job, as you rightly said, you said not sexy, we say it's invisible. So to make it visible, from invisible to visible, so we will talk about this. But may I ask one question? When you are now leading a very powerful NGO, European Climate Foundation, in your deliberations, in your discussions with the leaders, does the word policy option efficiency come at all on the agenda? It is all mainly renewables and electric cars and others?
No, definitely yes. That's why I think we should think about those systems, because people come and you just look and keeping on the international type of activities or European countries. You talk to any government in Europe, they would begin to think about transport policy, meaning electrification of transport, or or yes, renewable energy, or the share between nuclear and so phasing out coal, or this type of thing. It's a big decision making. It's not a big decision making. We have to make energy efficiency a big decision making. On the other side, I think, because of course they feel that they have done a lot through building codes, for example. I take the example of my country. Building codes are very, very strong, very, very tough. When you want to build a new home, it has to be really, really energy efficient. Nevertheless, the whole stock we have is, of course, not. And so I think we need a systemic thinking of how we can make this, and I said a poverty story, a social story, but at the same time a technological story. And maybe it's needed, because maybe we have to be much more adaptive, we have to mix the financial instrument Ajay was referring to. But I think, you are doing so much of a scenario setting in IEA. And I cannot imagine that your department on energy efficiency is not related to your vision. Of course, I know, you know me, I'm pushing IEA to really have a very strong 1.5 compatible scenario. But you may have to develop the thinking of the system and then put energy efficiency that can represent a big political issue and not an incremental one. Because I'm struck by this is not biting with the government today.
Very inspirational. Thank you very much, Lawrence. Now, let me move to Canada. Joyce, you are, as Mr. Toyota put it, you are an enviable country, lots of energy resources. Do you think that such a country with lots of energy resources, do you have enough drivers to push the energy efficiency policies, and do you get also inspiration from other countries around the world, being a Canada, such an important country and lots of energy resources and a prosperous country? You have enough drivers for saving energy?
Yes, sorry.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I guess it's a bit multifaceted. So maybe what I'll start by saying is that, Canada is a very fortunate country. We do have a lot of different and diverse energy sources. Obviously, we're a strong player on the oil and gas side, nuclear, hydro. We mostly have a clean grid. We certainly don't have any energy shortages. And I guess that is a bit of a double-edged sword, as you're suggesting. First of all, it means that our energy is relatively cheap in Canada, so that can make it difficult to incent energy efficiency. But what I would say is that currently energy efficiency is at the heart of our government's agenda, and part of that is because of climate action. That's a really big driver for us. Under the Paris Accord and what we call the Pan-Canadian Framework, which is our domestic policy strategy to meet our Paris goals, energy efficiency is down to meet a third of that target. So it's really significant for us. The second thing I would say is that because energy efficiency is really important for competitiveness in our industrial space, and because we have such a close trading relationship with our American counterparts, and we're sort of geographically and culturally linked, competitiveness in our industrial side is really important, and energy efficiency can play a role there. And I guess the third component for us is on jobs. So one of the nice things about energy efficiency is that those are largely domestic jobs that are created, especially when we're playing in the buildings retrofit space and appliances and equipment to some degree as well. And so those are some of our big drivers. So I would say right now especially energy efficiency is in a bit of a sweet spot, and we are fairly ambitious in wanting to do more. And so right now our energy efficiency program, I would say one of the strengths of it is that it's fairly long-standing, but also it touches every part of our economy. So our electrification of transport, for example, we're ramping up on. We have over 40 product categories that we regulate on equipment and appliances. We have building and industrial programs as well, and housing programs. I guess maybe one of the challenges is that because we're a federation, we don't control all the levers. And so we do see sometimes, depending on where our provincial governments are at, that we have to work a little harder at the federal level on our leadership and with some of the other tools that we have to continue to push energy efficiency. But maybe I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. So it means the driver in Canada, or perhaps your neighbor, the United States, is very different than in Japan. So perhaps we have to cut the television also here, Mr. Taylor. Then they may start to put the energy efficiency policies. But I am thankful to the Canadian government now taking the energy efficiency very, very seriously compared to past. It is a great achievement. What about the other countries? Do you look at the other countries' energy efficiency policies, whether or not you can get some inspiration from the others, energy-rich countries, for example?
Absolutely. I've actually found this conference extremely helpful, so thank you for convening it. I think one of the areas that we're really interested in learning from other countries, potentially European countries in particular, is on the financing question and how we incent more private capital into, in particular, building retrofits. So one of our kind of major areas in Canada under our agenda to meet our Paris targets is on building retrofits. So right now we're developing a code for our existing buildings. So that's the first time we've done that in Canada. We also have an ambitious code for new buildings to get to net zero ready by 2030. And so on the retrofit side for our existing buildings, what we're finding is that we probably don't have all the levers that we need to get private sector capital in, to get our lending institutions interested. And we heard a lot about that in the last couple of days, and some ideas from other countries on how they've been pushing that forward. So I think we would certainly look to be learning from those other countries in that aspect especially.
Thank you very much. Now, my last question will go to Brian. Afterwards, I will come to you if you have questions, including Cedric Friber. If you have questions, please get ready to ask questions. In fact, the questions I raised to other colleagues here were offered lots of suggestions from Brian, and he made also suggestions for himself, but I will not ask that question, Brian, so it was a soft one. So mine is a bit of a different one, Brian. So you started with the IEA 2.5 years ago, and we didn't have an energy efficiency division before. With Brian, we built the energy efficiency division, and now very strong, one of the strongest divisions in terms of the number of experts, in terms of resources and everything. And in a very short period of time, this division put its stamp on the IEA work on the global energy efficiency discussion. So first of all, thank you very much in front of everybody. But if you could tell us two most difficult challenges you faced during these 2.5 years, in terms of dealing with the policymakers across the world, what would they be? What was the most difficult challenge that you did face, or you are facing now in terms of conveying our messages, conveying our analysis the entire world?
Thank you, Fatih. And you didn't read out the question. I said, would you like a pay rise? But you can read that out later. Let me start.
I see the Irish ambassador sitting there, so perhaps...
yes, I've got my backup with me. So, let me say one challenge I didn't face, which I thought I would, and then the challenges that we do face, and they're ongoing. One that I thought we would face more than we do, because I came from national policy making, was how different would energy efficiency issues be in the very wide range of countries we deal with. Because of course we deal with our 30 members, but we also deal with all the key family members in the emerging economies, and much wider. We deal with literally hundreds of countries on energy efficiency. And as Mr. Terada has said, there's a Japanese way for efficiency, there's an Indian way for efficiency. It's different in different cases. But what I find, to use an analogy, is even though countries might choose different items from the menu to be suitable for them, what's on the menu is broadly similar. The types of technologies countries want to deploy and the types of policies they might deploy to deliver that are broadly similar. And that's why learning from each other is proving so valuable. And I think that's one of the reasons why We've been very gratified with the welcome we have received with our expanded work in efficiency, because countries really do want us to help them learn from each other, and there's so much potential for that. In terms of the challenges, I would name two that are not unrelated. One is efficiency, I still think, is made in a different corridor. Efficiency policy is made in a different corridor to much of the rest of energy policy. It's still a little bit of an outsider sometimes when it's a senior boardroom for energy policy in a given ministry. Efficiency maybe doesn't quite make the top meeting, it makes the subcommittee or something like that. And I think there is still a sense that efficiency policy is not adequately integrated into core energy policy thinking at a national and a global level. It's almost a little bit separate, and we find even that sometimes the energy efficiency policy community, which many people are here from today, is not the same people who are the energy policy community, and I think that's a challenge. A related one to that is just efficiency is complicated. It's not as straightforward from a governance point of view as some aspects of energy policy, because it is so dispersed. And I sometimes make the contrast that if I'm a Minister for Energy, which thankfully I'm not, if I want to promote renewables in my country, I probably have the power to put a tariff in place or put a regulation in place that can really drive the uptake of solar in the electricity sector, or the uptake of district heat, or whatever it might be. But if I'm the Minister that wants to really push efficiency, I've got to think about buildings policy, transport policy, the way people behave as consumers, the way the education sector works, industry policy, how codes are enforced, never mind written. So it's a much more dispersed issue from a governance point of view, and therefore it's harder for governments to grasp and really deliver. And so I think a challenge for us in dealing with energy ministries is, while they're the people most incentivized to really drive energy efficiency, they're not the full story when it comes to actually deliberating on the ground.
Thank you very much, Brian. Now, let me turn to the colleagues here who would like to ask a question to our colleagues. So I have now 3 questions. I take them and I stop here. The gentleman over there and the back.
Thank you very much. Paul Hodgson from the European Commission. Very much appreciated this conference. We always appreciate the analytical support and the bringing together of different ideas that the IEA brings. Right now we're facing a problem, which is that our progress on energy efficiency has slowed down or even stopped in the last few years. I was interested to see from the IEA's report that we're seeing similar trends in most other jurisdictions, although the US seems to be an exception still. Have the panel any advice on what's happening and what we can do to accelerate again?
Excellent. So perhaps this question may go to Laurence and maybe also Brian. But Paul, may I take this opportunity to thank you in Brussels to be the man of efficiency and pushing it very strong. Thank you very much for all your efforts, Paul. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The gentleman over there was another question. Yes.
My name is Pierre Bukas. I'm from Capsoc, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Could the panel elaborate on the potential divergence between policies that are taken at a local level and policies that are taken at a national level? Do you see that in the future there could be a gap between those policies, and if so, what are the potential policy instruments that can be used to bridge that gap so that you can attain those specific goals?
Perhaps this is local versus federal. It can go to Canada, and perhaps also Mr. Toyoda can look at this question. Last question from Mr. Yang from China.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But originally from China, but this time I'm from Washington, D.C. Thank you.
You change again, so this is
Thank you. It's a wonderful discussion. Thank you, Fatty, for everyone else. And my question is particularly, I think, for Josie. And you answered very well. Answer questions for Fatty, why and how the Canadian government or country, Canada, will have drivers for energy efficiency. That's 3 drivers I remember. That's climate orientation or climate obligation. Second one is complying with the regional trade. Third one, job. I think you mentioned that. It's best. My question is, does the government of Canada have a special policy to improve energy efficiency countrywide. Like in Japan, they push energy efficiency because of they do not have energy resources. So education, I think the policy is very important. Every child has a concept to save energy. Does Canada have this kind of a policy to drive energy efficiency countrywide? Thank you.
Perfect. So if I may add one question, which being a bit selfish to Ajay. Ajay, you know the entire global energy scene and architect. If you were to give me and Brian a piece of advice, what IEA should do in the energy efficiency based on the, the IEA, our resources, our ambitions, what piece of advice you would give us in terms of energy efficiency? So perhaps I can start with Joyce. You get the questions, all of you, and then finish by Ajay.
Sure. So I think I have two questions to attempt to answer. The first was with respect to whether there's a divergence or when there is a divergence between local and national level of governments and what could be done about that. And so just maybe I'll speak from specifically the Canadian example. So we have I would say a particularly complex federation in the sense that we have two major levels of government, the national government and then our provincial and territorial governments. So there are 13 of those. We also have a significant government agenda around Indigenous reconciliation, and so we have many Indigenous communities and governments in Canada, all at different stages of reconciliation as we move forward, who also play in the energy sphere. And then we also have our city governments, and in some cases in Canada, because we don't have enormous cities, but we have cities that in a couple of cases actually have larger populations than a couple of our small provinces. So we play a lot between those areas, and there is sometimes divergence already that we see for energy efficiency as well as other policies in Canada. And so I guess the approach that we try to take, and we're sort of, I guess, renowned for our politesse, is to just work and be as flexible as possible and have as large a toolbox as possible to try to find common ground between those different levels. So, for example, in the energy efficiency space, we have a large scope of programs that we provide. Energy Star is kind of a big brand name program that we've spent a lot of time and energy and investment on. We have many others as well. We also try to work through regulations on the equipment and appliances side, because that's a federal power, because most of our appliances are imported, so that falls to the federal government. But we also do things like the IEA does in terms of convening discussions and showing leadership in that respect. So we just try to have a really broad toolbox so that we can try to minimize divergence in that area. And then the second question was with respect to whether or not Canada has a special policy on energy efficiency. So I wouldn't say that we have like one big target in energy efficiency, and part of that is because of the complexity of the federation that I've noted. But what we do have is our Paris Agreement targets, where energy efficiency is a really significant way that we plan to meet those. And we do have different programs in the industrial space, in the transportation space. Right now, for example, our Office of Energy Efficiency, which I have the privilege of leading, is rolling out a fairly significant electric vehicle and hydrogen and natural gas program in order to increase use of alternative transportation. We also have a lot of consumer-oriented tools. For example, in the transportation space, we've had a long-standing fuel efficiency guide that is based on models. So we don't really have that kind of overarching one target, partly because we were approaching this in quite a flexible way, but we do try to bring all of our tools forward to advance energy efficiency. And I think our latest report, so we do an annual report to our Parliament, showed that even though energy is increasing, and we are kind of big energy users in Canada, it's increasing. We had energy savings as well, and so where energy would have increased, energy use would have increased 55%, it only increased 30%. So that's how we're doing on energy efficiency. So,
thank you very much. Lawrence, you heard the question from Paul, our ambassador for energy efficiency at large in Brussels. So, Paul,
tough job.
Yes, tough job, but he is doing an excellent job there. So you talk a lot with the European energy policy decision makers, with the different issues, including climate change and energy efficiency. Why it is slowing down in Europe? Why Europe has very strong, ambitious targets to reduce the emissions? Isn't it a disconnect between stronger targets vis-a-vis the energy efficiency improvements are slowing down?
I don't know if it's complex relation, because again, we are, of course, as you will know, in a phase like many countries, we are trying to see what we can offer at global level as a new target for emission reduction by 2030. At the same time, when we are looking at numbers for 2020, in some cases, globally, in a way, the achievement of the emission reduction for 2020 will make it on EU level, not when we look at some individual countries, of course, as you know. Renewable energy has gone relatively well, but what has really slowed down is energy efficiency, and I can see in many countries we are missing the target. So, and of course we are already in a discussion, should we go beyond 40% in 2030 as an offer at the global level, because we have to revise our NDC like anyone. So, and again, you know much better, but I see the difficulty for government to in a way to grab that issue. That seems so complex because it's so many topics and so many angles. And in a way, I see the disconnect. Where I see the disconnect is even on the targets on energy efficiency, and then the battle in the trenches on every regulation. Let's say emission for a coal-based power plant, or electricity plants, or cars, so I think we have at a point we may have exhausted the traditional way in Europe. And that's why it's interesting to discuss the different systems. Even if we have our own ways, it may be the moment, because we have to make this big jump. You were talking about the effort we have to make in energy efficiency. That could make 40% of the emission reduction we are looking for. And we have to do that. This idea that now is beginning to trickle down, that we have to be around net zero emission by 2050, at least the countries that can, means that we cannot do that without energy efficiency. So that for sure. We can't do that just by putting more renewable energy in the system. That will not deliver it. And the consumption aspect is beginning to be more, more visible. And we need to tackle industry and transport, etc. So I think we are at a moment where we have to revise the doctrine. We are struggling in this year because we have been very strong on energy efficiency first, but we see that now consumers' organizations who are funding, NGOs, they are like, we can't get more. So I think we should flip totally the way we talk about that. We should think about, and that's why I think it's important, the work we are doing in IEA, which is how you set the vision, the long-term vision. And if in the long-term vision of IEA, and of course, again, pushing you to be as ambitious as you see fit or possible, and to say, look, you would not be able to avoid really catastrophic climate change if you are not serious on energy efficiency as a part of the system. And this is about a technology revolution as well. Fatih, I take your point. It was a very good argument in the past to say, look, with the technology we have, we can do much better. And then there is so much transaction cost that this is not happening, or because we don't have the financial instrument, or because we don't have the market organized. So again, I'm thinking aloud, as that was the rule of this conversation. I think we should think about how we can portray energy efficiency differently, that it is a profound change in the system, and it may be, by the way, a profound organizational change in the system we need. Because pushing a little more regulation or pushing a little more, we have to make not 24 but 25 targets in energy efficiency is not delivering. And in fact, well, I'm talking really about Europe here. I'm not talking about other countries. So I think it's a good moment, because if not, we will be just losing ground without understanding why we are losing ground, and we'll miss the target. So again, you could really change the discussion. And again, remembering, I was in this room not very far from here when I'm preparing for Paris, and there was this discussion on where energy efficiency should be, and there was this effort of IEA and really raising all the, you remember the ideas that it should be part of the MEF meetings, that it was not really delivering anything. And then we picked up the ball, IEA picked up the ball. And so I think you are in a good moment, in my view, to change the narrative about that.
Thank you very much, Vance, for your trust in the IEA, and lots of responsibilities and more weight on the shoulders of Brian without any pay rise. So I can tell you that. So, Mr. Toeda, the question our colleague from CAPSAC, the federal versus local, is it a challenge or is it an opportunity?
Well, for Japan, it's a physically small country, so I think central government plays a key role. First, the central government formulates across the board policy, but in addition to that, local governments such as Tokyo Metropolitan government, and also Kyoto. Well, Kyoto has its own historic memory about Kyoto Protocol. Yes. So they're trying to have additional efforts. But I think at the minimum level, the central government provides a policy framework which could be predictable and digestible. And now when local governments try to have additional efforts, the government would commend those efforts, and this could be a sort of top runner approach. But I think in the case of Japan, central government plays a key role, unlike United States, a big country with very powerful state government. But I think it depends on the country. If federal government clearly, state government can play a key role. But in such a country as Japan, central government can play more important role. Could I respond to the first question? I think even in Japan, we have a similar problem. After the oil crisis, we showed remarkable performance. But after that, the price was somehow stays at a low level. The efforts to improve efficiency was somehow disappearing. But after the Fukushima accident, again, people woke up and tried to make further efforts. So I think it's a matter of sense of crisis and how we could make people wake up. And I think climate change is a common problem for all of us. And so by taking advantage of the importance of climate change, I think perhaps we could wake up the people and continue to make further efforts. But one more thing, there is a possible game changer. That would be digitalization. I think we haven't discussed too much about this, but I think digitalization could be a game changer, and we are trying to promote digitalization in order to make further efforts. And probably Japan is not the top runner at this moment. I think we can learn from each other. But maybe IEA could take a leadership on that front. I think that's quite important.
Exactly. I think in the morning session, both the Finnish minister and Estonian minister highlighted exactly what you said, Mr. Toyoda, how digitalization can accelerate the energy efficiency improvement. So I will ask my last question to Ajay, and then perhaps Brian can have some concluding remarks, and we finish our meeting in a few minutes. Ajay, once again, as a wise man in energy coming from a country which shows a lot of achievements in energy efficiency among others, what would be your piece of advice to IEA in this domain?
Fatih, in January of 2016, when we were still in the midst of the Paris euphoria, Laurence, the Prime Minister set up a group of 11 senior-most bureaucrats in the government and told us, come up with new initiatives so that energy efficiency rate can be doubled. It was a huge challenge. And I remember stepping out of that room and calling, not exactly your predecessor, but Philippe Benoit, and asking, Philippe, tell me, what do we say? And apart from saying the rules and regulations should be more, the standards and labeling should be tighter. The coverage of the Perform, Achieve and Trade program for industry should be more. There really wasn't anything new we could say. I think now, and coming back to the point that Dr. Toyoda said, if you were to ask me now, I would say, given the work that you have done, digitalization provides a new opportunity. I would suggest that the first thing that we need to do, and this has been a discussion that Paul has brought out, Lawrence has brought out, is what are the new tools that are available in our quiver. That's the first suggestion. The second is that, again, this is following this report that we did, we were asked to present it to the Parliamentary Committee on Energy. And the Parliamentary Committee on Energy held 6 meetings. At the end of the 6th meeting, a member of Parliament came up to me and said, I understand LED is energy efficiency. What else is energy efficiency? I said, oh my God, 6 meetings. And that's when it hit me that visualization is important. The reason why renewables gets attention is because you can see it. LED, you can see it's physically different from a normal light bulb. Most of the other things that we do don't look physically different. So therefore, the second suggestion is, how can we visualize many of the energy efficiency things that we do? And one of the specific areas where every country is having a challenge is building energy efficiency. In buildings, municipalities have asked me point blank, why on earth should we hire more engineers to implement the energy conservation building code? We don't get any benefit. The municipality, country gets a benefit. And therefore, for them, as I see it, the benefit is property taxes increase because the value of energy efficient buildings is more. Now, similarly, we'll have to create narratives around everything that we do. That was the second. And the last issue, Fatih, is this kind of, we were looking at a Japanese approach, we were looking at an Indian approach. What is it that can be suggested? So, I must confess, in India, we have shamelessly copied the best of Japan, the best of Germany, and so on. And one of the things that we saw was that regulation, whether it is in industry or on appliances, works best when there are few companies to be regulated and they have a huge reputational risk at stake, something we discussed just now. Okay, what we also discovered was you can't have huge changes in energy efficiency because of regulation. That occurs because people see markets, large markets. Consequently, what we did, and as Mr. Toyoda said, every country will do it differently, what we did was use the markets to bring down the prices of LED bulbs. Now LED bulbs are managed through the standards and labeling program. So therefore, what is it that makes sense under different circumstances is something else that I think it would be amazingly useful to look at. I think your top 10 program is something that has brought the two together, both the large markets as well as continuous increases which lead to scales and price reduction. So, Fatih, this is my wish list.
Perfect. 3 points, digitalization, visualization, and bring the funding, the models, markets and regulation harmonized. Excellent. Thank you very much, Ajay. Very wise suggestions for the IE and rest of us. Now, Brian, we had an excellent meeting. First of all, thank you very much to you and to your team, bringing 250 people out of more than 60 countries here discussing 2 days. We are all very tired. You must be as well. But what would you, can you conclude this meeting with 1 or 2 words of the 2 days? What have you seen? How can we finish this meeting?
Well, the first word is thanks, because we're really grateful that so many people came to join us and participate, and I think we've had some really rich, interactive discussions, and of course thanks to my team who put in a tremendous amount of hard work to organize the event intellectually as well as the content on the ground. And our report that you mentioned this morning, Fatih, says very clearly we're not making as much progress as we need to on energy efficiency, and equally the efficient world scenario shows that we're not making as much progress as we could be. There's all this untapped potential out there. But 2 things make me a little optimistic and make me think that tomorrow will not be the same as yesterday. One is digitalization, as we discussed. I think it really has the ability to disrupt energy efficiency, make it a very different landscape in terms of making new ways of financing and procuring efficiency possible, the way we measure it in much more robust ways, opening up new technologies, getting efficiency involved in things like balancing electricity markets, bringing flexibility to systems, things like that. So I think that I think we don't fully appreciate this isn't just about optimizing a boiler or making a car a bit more fine-tuned. This could really change efficiency, I think. The second thing is I do think in the last couple of years as we've worked to take this conversation global at the IEA, there has never been a time when there's so much attunedness to efficiency, I think, among governments and among countries. Countries are realizing in the spirit of the sense of crisis, the sense of pressure, that efficiency has to be the part of everybody's energy strategy and climate strategy and economic strategy. And I think there's a real realization there that efficiency is important. And of course, that's why our strategy has been to help governments who have made that realization really deliver on the ground. In terms of the exchange platform that you launched this morning is all about governments learning from each other, and it's not about the glossy stuff about how to set a target or how to put a national plan in place. It's about the real chunky stuff on the ground. Why did this policy work better than this one? What was the secret of making this one really have an impact? So, and of course related to that is the capacity building and training and everything that goes into that kind of real on the ground stuff. So our focus is very much on action and on impact, and I think that's certainly that they will continue to be our watchwords into the future.
Thank you very much, Brian. So I wanted to finish this meeting by thanking first of all Brian and his team. So since 2 days we had several ministers, CEOs, such eminent speakers like this, the leaders from the energy efficiency community, the experts across the world. This is very much appreciated. This is our 3rd global conference on energy efficiency. Every year it becomes better and better. Next year it will be even better. I wanted to just explain one point I made this morning. This morning some of you may not be there. To repeat it, 3 years ago we nicknamed energy efficiency as the first fuel. And many ministers, many CEOs started to use it. But this morning I said it is not called anymore first fuel, it is now called very first fuel. Why I explain, let me explain, since we are at the end of the day and we are all tired and so we can be a bit more relaxed. So after we first say first fuel, of course we have a huge constituency, the ministers, companies and so on. Some fuels, for example, renewable community said, we are growing very strongly, we should be the first fuel. Then some colleagues from the oil industry said, when you look at the total energy mix, we have the highest share, so we should be the first fuel. And some other technologies say we provide the base load in the electricity generation, we should be the first fuel. We told them all of the time, okay, you are all the first fuel, but energy efficiency is the very first fuel. So it is the reason why I called energy efficiency the very first fuel. It will be like that for us, and I will look at Brian and his team to continue to work very strong and make the IEA and a real energy efficiency center globally, and we are looking forward to see all of you for our 4th global conference on energy efficiency next year. And many thanks to all of you. We will follow this at different levels. I see my colleague from for example, working with the industry is a very important part of our work. I see my colleague Espen Melum from the World Economic Forum Secretariat. I have another hat. I am the chair of the advisory board of Davos World Economic Forum. We are thinking of organizing something for the leaders, following what Laurence said, the leaders of the policy, leaders of the industry, to understand the imperatives of energy efficiency and its critical role for energy security, for climate change, and bring it to also working more closely with industry. Many thanks to all of you, especially those coming from North America, Asia, Africa, Middle East, and elsewhere. And we wish all of you a very nice weekend. Thank you very much.